My family blamed me for everything, so I left without a word. A month later, they realized I was the financial backbone and begged me back. The elegant, gilded invitation lay on the antique mahogany table, a cruel mockery of warmth and inclusion. Isolde Dubois, a woman whose 72 years sat gracefully upon her, her silver hair coiled in a meticulous bun, picked it up with a hand that trembled ever so slightly. The heavy cardstock, embossed with a swirling, opulent script, felt cold beneath her fingertips, a stark contrast to the vibrant, almost aggressive gold leaf that framed the announcement. It was for Sterling and Serafina's annual charity gala, an event that had, for years, been almost entirely underwritten by Isolde's generous fortune. Her eyes, usually holding a quiet, contemplative depth, now traced the familiar names, a quiet sigh escaping her lips. This yearly ritual, once a source of faint pride in her son's supposed achievements, had long since curdled into a bitter obligation. Yet, the accompanying text message from Sterling, her only son, was what truly delivered the chill, piercing through the thin veneer of social grace the invitation attempted to project. Mother, about the gala, Sterling's message read, his usual casual tone amplified by the impersonal text, an electronic shrug of indifference. Serafina and I have decided it would be best if you sat at one of the donor tables in the back. The main table is quite full, and we're aiming for a very specific aesthetic this year, you know? More exclusive. Isolde's grip tightened on her phone, the cold metal digging into her palm. Exclusive. That word, delivered with such careless disregard, felt like a physical blow, a sudden, sharp intake of breath as if struck in the gut. The irony was a suffocating weight. She had funded this exclusivity for decades. Every lavish detail, every celebrated guest, every shimmering gown and gourmet dish, had been born from her quiet generosity. To be relegated to the back, to a donor table as if she were a mere patron and not the silent architect of their entire social edifice, was an insult that resonated deep within her bones. Before she could even fully process the quiet sting of that message, her phone rang, its insistent vibration startling her. It was Serafina. Isolde answered, her voice even, betraying nothing of the churning emotions within. Her composure was a finely honed shield, a lifetime's practice in masking the wounds inflicted by those she loved most. Isolde, darling. Serafina's voice, usually a melodious purr designed to charm and disarm, now had an edge of thinly veiled impatience, a brittle sharpness that cut through the pleasantries. About the gala, Sterling told me he spoke to you. Honestly, given the guest list this year, all the elite, you know, we just feel, perhaps you might be more comfortable staying home? Your presence wouldn't quite fit the aesthetic, as Sterling said. We don't want you to feel out of place among such vibrant company. Vibrant company, Isolde repeated in her mind, a bitter taste filling her mouth, acrid and unwelcome. The implication was clear, brutally so. She was old, she was boring, she was an embarrassment. Her understated elegance, her quiet intellect, her very essence, were apparently too dull for their glittering world. She, the quiet architect of their entire lavish existence, was being deemed unfit to sit at the table she had paid for, even unfit to attend the event she had bankrolled. It was not just an insult, it was an erasure, a deliberate attempt to render her invisible, to deny her presence, her history, her very being. Then came the final, audacious demand, delivered with chilling casualness, as if discussing a grocery list. Oh, and one more thing, Isolde, Serafina continued, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing within the woman on the other end of the line, completely unconcerned with the tremor that now ran through Isolde's rigid posture. We've decided to add a surprise VIP entertainment act, very last minute, very exclusive, but it's quite costly. We need another substantial transfer, say, 100,000, by tomorrow morning. Just a small sum for you, I'm sure, considering your resources. 100,000. A small sum. The words hung in the air, echoing the hollow ring of their entitlement. Isolde's gaze drifted across her elegant living room, filled with cherished memories of a life built on love and quiet dignity with her late husband, Charles Dubois. His presence, even in absence, still imbued the space with warmth. He was a renowned architect whose legacy had provided her with the means to live comfortably, to pursue quiet passions, to give generously. Means she had, for decades, poured into her son and his family, not just the money itself, but her hopes, her dreams of familial closeness, hoping to buy not just their happiness, but their affection and respect. The irony was a suffocating weight, pressing down on her chest until it felt difficult to breathe. This was not a plea, not a request. It was a demand, delivered with the casual air of someone ordering a new coat, a fleeting thought, a mere transaction. Isolde's hand, which had trembled with the initial shock of the text, now steadied, a new, formidable strength flowing through her veins. A quiet fury, cold and resolute, began to simmer beneath her composed exterior. It was not a fiery, explosive rage, but a deep, arctic resolve, solidifying into granite. The lifetime of slights, the countless indignities, the emotional neglect, the unacknowledged sacrifices, all congealed into this singular, unbearable moment. Her vision blurred for a second, not from tears, for the well of her tears had long since dried in the face of such profound ingratitude, but from the sharpness of a sudden, crystal-clear realization. Enough. It was, truly, irrevocably, enough. She did not respond to Serafina. She did not utter a single word of protest or despair. She simply ended the call. Her movements were slow, deliberate, as if she were moving through thick water, each action imbued with a newfound gravity. She picked up her landline, her fingers, usually so practiced at dialing family numbers that had brought her so little solace, now dialing a number she rarely used, that of Mr. Alastair Finch, her long-standing private banker. As the phone rang, a rhythmic, almost meditative sound, she simultaneously reached for her other phone, the one she used for business, its sleek, modern design a contrast to the antique landline. With a swift movement, she found the contact for Mr. Silas Thorne, her family lawyer. Without a word, without a moment of hesitation, Isolde Dubois prepared to dismantle the financial empire she had painstakingly, silently built for a family that had repaid her only with disdain. The foundation of their opulent lives, the very ground upon which their gilded world stood, was about to crumble, and they, in their self-absorbed world, were utterly oblivious. To truly understand the quiet devastation that had finally ignited Isolde's resolve, one had to look back, to the decades of silent sacrifices that had woven the fabric of the Dubois family's opulent life. Isolde had inherited a significant fortune from her late husband, Charles Dubois, a man whose architectural masterpieces adorned skylines across the globe, monuments not just to his talent, but to his integrity. He had built their wealth with meticulous vision, with honesty, and with a profound sense of responsibility, leaving Isolde a legacy not just of money, but of deep-rooted values that, tragically, had failed to take root in their only son, Sterling. Charles had been a man of quiet strength, finding joy in creation, in the precise lines of a blueprint, in the steady growth of something real and lasting. He had instilled in Isolde a belief in hard work, in the dignity of earning one's way, in the quiet satisfaction of true accomplishment. It was these values that now made Sterling's entitlement feel like such a profound betrayal. Sterling, now 51, had always been charmingly feckless, a man of grand ideas and fleeting enthusiasms, drifting from one half-hearted venture to another, none of them ever truly succeeding. His early 20s saw him dabbling in tech startups that promised billions but delivered nothing. In his 30s, it was a sustainable luxury goods brand that quickly went bankrupt, leaving a trail of unpaid suppliers. More recently, he had been involved in an opaque investment fund that mostly seemed to involve expensive lunches and vague pronouncements. It was Isolde who, in her boundless, almost desperate love for her son, had always stepped in. She had convinced herself that he just needed a little more time, a little more support, that one day he would find his footing, that her unwavering belief in him would somehow manifest success. Each bailout was a fresh injection of hope, a renewed promise to herself that this time, it would be different. When Sterling and Serafina, his socialite wife, decided they simply must live in the exclusive Willow Creek Estates, a neighborhood renowned for its sprawling mansions and manicured lawns, it was Isolde who provided the exorbitant 20% down payment for their sprawling 5-bedroom mansion, a sum exceeding $1 million. She had visited the house once, a cavernous space filled with echoing emptiness, and thought of the modest, warm home she and Charles had built together, filled with books and art and laughter. But Sterling had gushed about its potential, about Serafina's dreams, and Isolde had capitulated, as she always did. She then, subtly at first, covered their monthly mortgage payments, which ran close to $15,000, for over 2 decades. Year after year, the money seamlessly flowed from her accounts to theirs, a silent river nourishing their extravagant lives, a hidden tributary that kept their opulent facade shimmering. She had set up automatic transfers, hoping the consistency would lessen the sting of constant requests, but the requests always came, for something extra, something more. Their luxury cars were also Isolde's gift, purchased out of a desire to see her son succeed, to alleviate his constant financial anxieties. Sterling's sleek, black Mercedes S-Class, Serafina's pristine white Range Rover, both purchased outright by Isolde, and subsequently, their insurance and maintenance bills covertly absorbed into her myriad monthly payments. She remembered the thrill Sterling had expressed when she had bought him his first luxury car in his early 30s, a Porsche, after one of his startups had spectacularly failed, leaving him deeply in debt and unusually subdued. He had embraced her then, for a fleeting moment, with genuine warmth, his head resting on her shoulder as he murmured his thanks. But those moments, those rare glimpses of vulnerability and gratitude, had grown increasingly rare, replaced by a casual assumption of her unending generosity. The grandchildren, Lily and Jasper, now teenagers, attended the elite Hawthorne Academy, a private school with annual tuition fees that rivaled a small country's GDP. Isolde paid every cent, not just the exorbitant tuition, but the expensive extracurriculars, Lily's equestrian lessons and show fees, which involved travel and elite trainers, Jasper's private golf coaching and international tournaments that took him across continents. She funded their spring break trips to Aspen and their summer vacations in the Hamptons, ensuring they had all the advantages money could buy, all the privileges that came with their supposed station. She did it because she believed in investing in their future, in providing them with opportunities she herself had never had. And because, deep down, she hoped that her generosity would translate into a familial bond, a warmth, a sense of belonging for her. She saw Lily's bright smile after a successful show, or Jasper's excited chatter about a new golf course, and a flicker of hope ignited within her, a silent prayer that perhaps, through them, the family she yearned for would finally materialize. Serafina, in particular, viewed Isolde as nothing more than a bottomless ATM, an inexhaustible resource to be tapped for her own social advancement. Her charity events, elaborate galas that served primarily to boost her social standing and validate her self-importance, were always funded by Isolde. The opulent venue rentals and grand ballrooms, the gourmet catering by celebrity chefs, the fees for the lesser-known celebrity entertainers, the designer gowns Serafina wore to these events, often different for each appearance, all bore Isolde's invisible financial signature. Serafina would often wax poetic about her philanthropic endeavors at these gatherings, her voice dripping with affected sincerity, never once crediting the woman who made it all possible. Isolde, if she even attended, was relegated to a corner, an elderly wallflower observing her own money being paraded, her contributions erased from the narrative. She remembered one gala where she overheard Serafina telling a group of socialites that she had personally secured the venue, carefully omitting the detail that Isolde had paid for it in full. A quiet ache had settled in Isolde's chest that night, a familiar companion. For Isolde, the financial outlay was secondary. What she truly craved was love, respect, and to feel like a cherished, integral part of her family, not just a service provider. But she was consistently treated as an open wallet and an inconvenience. Christmas dinners at their mansion, which she had paid for, often saw her seated at a separate, smaller table in the kitchen, ostensibly for comfort, but in reality, to keep her out of sight, away from the important guests. She would watch through the open doorway as laughter and conversation flowed freely at the grand dining table, a silent ache in her heart. Birthday celebrations were often forgotten or reduced to a hasty, often perfunctory phone call, while Sterling and Serafina celebrated their own with lavish parties, complete with catered food and guest lists numbering in the hundreds. Isolde recalled calling Sterling on his 50th birthday, only for him to cut the call short, saying he had to prepare for his big party. She had quietly eaten a slice of cake alone that evening. The snide remarks had become a constant, low hum of disrespect, a drip of casual cruelty. "Mother, must you always wear those sensible shoes?" Serafina would comment, eyeing Isolde's comfortable yet elegant loafers with disdain, as if comfort were a sin. Isolde often wore classic, well-made garments, appreciating quality over fleeting trends, a habit Serafina found endlessly amusing and worthy of ridicule. Sterling would often interrupt her quiet anecdotes, stories from her childhood or about Charles, with a dismissive wave of his hand, saying, "Oh, mother, not that story again. It's a bit dull." Her outdated style, her boring presence, her quiet nature, all were fodder for their thinly veiled disdain, their implicit message that she simply wasn't good enough, not vibrant enough, not theirs enough. They never asked about her day, her thoughts, her feelings. Their conversations revolved entirely around their needs, their desires, their latest extravagant plans, their next big purchase. Isolde was merely a sounding board, a silent listener, and a seemingly endless well of funds. Isolde remembered the particular pain of a Thanksgiving a few years prior. She had spent days preparing her famous chestnut stuffing, a family tradition passed down from her own grandmother, a dish that filled her modest kitchen with warm, comforting aromas. She had arrived at their house, brimming with the quiet joy of contribution. But Serafina had already ordered an entire catered meal from an upscale restaurant, a lavish spread of trendy, artisanal dishes. "Oh, Isolde, dear, we thought we'd go modern this year. So much less fuss," Serafina had chirped, her voice falsely sweet, leaving Isolde's lovingly prepared dish untouched on the counter, nestled beside a pile of discarded catering boxes. Sterling had merely shrugged, engrossed in his phone, offering no word of comfort or appreciation. It was a small act, but it symbolized the larger pattern. Her efforts, her love, her very being, were simply unacknowledged, unwanted, treated with a dismissive disregard that cut deeper than any harsh word. She had tried, in her quiet way, to bridge the gap. She would offer to babysit, only to be told the children had tutors or playdates, their schedules too packed for an elderly grandmother. She would suggest family outings, a picnic in the park, a visit to a museum, only to be met with excuses of busy schedules, prior engagements, or outright disinterest. Each rejection chipped away at her spirit, yet her hope, stubbornly, persistently, clung on. She believed that one day, they would see her, truly see her, beyond the money. She believed her unconditional love would eventually soften their hearts, that they would realize the quiet, enduring presence she offered. That hope was a fragile thing, often bruised, often battered, but never entirely broken, until the gala invitation. Until Serafina's cold dismissal of her presence. Until their audacious demand for yet another 100,000, delivered with the casual assumption that Isolde was merely a resource to be tapped, not a human being to be respected. The well of her patience, deep as it was, had finally run dry. The years of quiet resentment had boiled over, transforming into a resolve as cold and hard as granite, as unyielding as the bedrock beneath the earth. The moments that followed Serafina's call were a blur of purposeful action for Isolde, a focused intensity that belied her usual gentle demeanor. Her hands, steady now, moved with a newfound efficiency, each gesture precise, deliberate. She first called Mr. Alastair Finch, her private banker for over 30 years. Mr. Finch was a man of discretion and unwavering professionalism, a quiet confidant in the intricate world of finance, accustomed to Isolde's quiet but firm directives, though none had ever been quite so sweeping. Mr. Finch, Isolde's voice was calm, almost detached, devoid of emotion, like a scientist reporting data. "I need you to halt all standing orders, direct debits, and lines of credit associated with Sterling Dubois and Serafina Beaumont's accounts, effective immediately. Mr. Finch, a seasoned veteran of financial management, paused, sensing the unprecedented gravity in her tone, the underlying steel that had been absent in previous discussions about their extravagant spending. He had long suspected where the true wealth lay, and he knew this was a monumental shift. "Mrs. Dubois, if I may inquire, are you certain? This includes their mortgage payments, the car leases, the school fees for the grandchildren, Mrs. Beaumont's various philanthropic commitments." His voice trailed off, a hint of concern entering his usually imperturbable tone. "Every single one, Mr. Finch," Isolde affirmed, her voice a steel thread woven through silk, unyielding and clear. "Every payment, every line of credit, every allowance I've extended. I want it all frozen. No exceptions. And I want their supplementary credit cards, which are linked to my primary account, cancelled immediately. The one that ends in 7890 for Sterling, and the one ending in 1234 for Serafina. All access to my funds severed. Completely." She could almost hear the quiet click of the guillotine in her mind. Mr. Finch, recognizing the uncharacteristic resolve in her voice, the chilling finality of her words, understood. This was not a moment of pique, not a temporary fit of anger. This was a decision forged in fire, cold and immutable. "Understood, Mrs. Dubois. I will initiate the process immediately. It will take a few hours for all systems to update, but the freezing of funds will begin within the hour. The credit cards will be deactivated almost instantly. There will be repercussions for them, of course." "Thank you, Alistair," Isolde said, using his first name, a rare gesture that underscored the personal weight of the moment, a silent acknowledgement of his long-standing loyalty. "I trust you will handle this with utmost discretion. I anticipate a flurry of panicked inquiries, and I wish for all communication to be directed to my legal counsel." "Of course, Mrs. Dubois. My absolute discretion is assured." The line clicked silent. Next, Isolde dialed Mr. Silas Thorne, her family lawyer. Mr. Thorne was a younger man, perhaps in his early 50s, meticulously dressed and sharp-witted, who had taken over the practice from his father, a close friend and legal advisor to Charles Dubois. Silas knew the family's financial landscape intimately. "Silas," Isolde began, without preamble, her voice brisk and businesslike, devoid of any preamble. "I need to revoke all powers of attorney, all financial agreements, and any informal arrangements that grant my son, Sterling Dubois, or his wife, Serafina Beaumont, any access or claim to my assets. I also wish to amend my will. Their inheritance is to be drastically reduced, perhaps to a nominal sum, and the majority of my estate is to be reallocated to charitable foundations dedicated to supporting independent artists and preserving historical architecture, causes Charles would have deeply admired, and a trust for my grandchildren, contingent upon their reaching the age of 30 and demonstrating financial independence and a commitment to genuine personal growth. No more handouts, Silas. They must earn it." Mr. Thorne, unlike Mr. Finch, expressed a flicker of surprise, a slight widening of his eyes, though he quickly masked it with professional composure. He had witnessed the constant financial drain, but never imagined Isolde would take such drastic action. "Mrs. Dubois, that is a significant change. Are you certain you wish to proceed with such drastic measures? These decisions are legally binding, and once enacted, very difficult to reverse." "I have never been more certain, Silas," Isolde stated, her voice unwavering, a testament to years of suppressed pain finally reaching its zenith. "I want all existing financial provisions for them terminated. Any previous agreements, any understanding, any form of support, consider it null and void. I need this to be legally ironclad. And I want the will amended as soon as possible. I also want to explore options for a legal separation of assets, ensuring they can make no future claims on anything I possess or will acquire." "Very well, Mrs. Dubois. I will draft the necessary documents and send them over for your review and signature this afternoon. We can schedule a time for you to come into the office, or I can arrange for a mobile notary to visit your home. The latter would be preferable, Isolde replied, already anticipating the privacy she would need. The sooner, the better. As she hung up the phone with her lawyer, a profound sense of calm settled over Isolde, a deep, cleansing breath after decades of holding it in. It wasn't the calm of indifference, but the quiet satisfaction of a long-overdue act of self-preservation, a liberation of the spirit. For decades, she had allowed herself to be diminished, her emotional needs trampled underfoot by the weight of their entitlement, their endless demands. Now, she had chosen herself. She walked to the window, gazing out at her manicured garden, and for the first time in a very long time, felt truly, completely free. The weight on her shoulders, a burden she had carried for so long, had finally lifted. The first ripple of the financial drought hit Serafina Beaumont with the suddenness of a cold shower, a shock to her carefully constructed world of effortless luxury. She was at the Couture Vault, her favorite high-end boutique, a temple of designer fashion where she was a revered client. She was admiring a limited edition gown, shimmering with intricate beadwork, that she had promised herself for the upcoming gala, already imagining the admiring glances she would receive. She presented her supplementary platinum card, linked to Isolde's account, with a flourish, a practiced gesture of casual affluence. The sales assistant, a young woman with perfectly coiffed hair and an air of polite deference, swiped it. The machine beeped, a harsh, unexpected sound, flashing declined. Serafina's perfectly sculpted eyebrows furrowed, a delicate flush rising on her cheeks. There must be some mistake, she huffed, her voice tight with disbelief, as if the machine itself had insulted her. Try it again. Perhaps the signal is weak. The sales assistant, maintaining a polite but firm demeanor, her expression carefully neutral, tried again. Declined. I'm sorry, Mrs. Beaumont, it seems there's an issue with the card. Perhaps you have another? Serafina's heart gave a flutter of annoyance. She fumbled in her designer handbag, pulling out another card, a different bank, but also linked to Isolde's primary account, a backup she rarely needed. Declined. Her flush deepened into an angry crimson, her carefully applied makeup unable to conceal her rising agitation. This was unheard of. She, Serafina Beaumont, whose financial fluidity was as unquestioned as the air she breathed, being denied a purchase in her favorite boutique. It was an insult, a public humiliation. She snatched the cards back, muttering about faulty systems and incompetent banks, and stormed out, blaming the boutique's antiquated card readers, utterly oblivious to the true seismic shift that had just occurred beneath her well-heeled feet. Meanwhile, Sterling was experiencing his own minor annoyances, the first tremors of the impending financial earthquake. His favorite artisanal coffee shop's app, linked to a direct debit from Isolde's account for his daily designer latte and organic pastry, suddenly informed him of insufficient funds. He tried to pay with his card. Declined. He shrugged it off as a temporary glitch, perhaps an issue with the bank's server, a momentary hiccup in the otherwise smooth flow of his existence. He was too important for such petty inconveniences. Later that afternoon, a notification popped up on his phone. The monthly payment for his exclusive luxury golf club membership had failed. This was more concerning, a slight wrinkle in his leisurely routine, but still, he attributed it to an oversight, a technical hiccup. He would just have Mother sort it out, as she always did. She was excellent at fixing these little inconveniences. The next day, the small annoyances escalated, morphing into a growing chorus of alarming notifications. Serafina's personal trainer, her weekly manicurist, her favorite organic grocery delivery service, the exorbitant monthly flower arrangements for the mansion, all reported failed payments. Her irritation began to morph into genuine concern, a cold dread creeping into her perfectly manicured world. She called the bank, only to be met with a labyrinthine automated system and vague explanations about account discrepancies and frozen lines of credit. She couldn't get a clear answer, only frustrating circular logic from unhelpful customer service representatives. Sterling's situation was equally dire. His car lease payment bounced, followed by a series of increasingly insistent calls from the dealership. Then, a curt but firm notice from Hawthorne Academy arrived. Lily and Jasper's tuition fees were overdue, and their enrollment was at risk. The school, accustomed to prompt payments from their elite clientele, was very polite but unyielding. This was a direct assault on their lifestyle, on their very image, on the carefully cultivated facade they presented to the world. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. "Sterling, this is ridiculous!" Serafina shrieked, waving the school notice in his face, her voice thin with rising hysteria. Her usually controlled movements were now jerky, agitated. "Every card is declined. The bank says everything is frozen. What in God's name is going on? We can't afford groceries. The caterers for the gala are calling hourly." Sterling, who had just received a curt email from his business partner about a crucial investment fund being inaccessible, felt a cold dread creep up his spine, a chilling realization of the precipice they were teetering on. "I don't know, Serafina. It's never happened before. I tried to transfer some funds, but my access to Mother's primary accounts has been completely revoked. It's as if they don't exist for me anymore." A chilling thought slowly dawned on them, too terrible to contemplate at first, too absurd to be real. It couldn't be. Not Isolde. She would never. She was their safety net, their endless provider, the rock upon which their lives were built. But who else could it be? She was their financial lifeline, the invisible hand that kept their elaborate house of cards from collapsing. The silence in the opulent mansion was suddenly deafening, filled only with the frantic beating of their own hearts. They called Isolde. Her phone rang, and went to voicemail, her calm, pre-recorded voice a mocking echo of their desperation. They called her landline. No answer. They sent frantic text messages, a deluge of confused questions, then demands, then pleas, each message growing more desperate, more unhinged. Isolde saw them all, sitting calmly in her study, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips, a quiet victory blooming in her heart. She did not respond. She knew, with a quiet certainty, that they would come. And when they did, she would finally have her say, every word carefully chosen, every grievance laid bare. The stage was set for the reckoning, a drama decades in the making. The doorbell of Isolde's elegant home chimed, a persistent, almost frantic sound, signaling the arrival of the storm she had anticipated, a predictable tempest of indignation and fear. Sterling and Serafina stood on her doorstep, their faces contorted with a mixture of fury, disbelief, and burgeoning panic. Serafina's designer dress, worn for what she thought would be a triumphant social visit, was slightly rumpled, her usually immaculate hair a little disheveled, a stark contrast to her usual polished appearance. Sterling's usually composed facade had crumbled, revealing a desperate, unhinged man beneath, his eyes wide with a frantic energy. Isolde opened the door, her expression serene, almost welcoming, as if greeting casual visitors. She was dressed in a simple, elegant silk blouse and tailored trousers, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, radiating an aura of calm strength. Her composure, her quiet dignity, only seemed to enrage them further, amplifying their own chaotic distress. "Mother! What in God's name is going on?" Sterling demanded, his voice thick with a mixture of outrage and genuine terror, pushing past her into the foyer without waiting for an invitation, Serafina close behind, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "My accounts are frozen. Serafina's cards are declined. The school just called about the children's tuition. They're threatening to expel Lily and Jasper. Have you lost your mind?" His voice cracked with disbelief. "Lost my mind, Sterling?" Isolde's voice was soft, dangerously calm, a low murmur that somehow commanded attention. She closed the door behind them, the quiet click echoing in the sudden silence of the spacious hall, a sound of definitive closure. "No, my dear. I believe I have finally found it." "Don't play games, Isolde." Serafina shrieked, her voice rising in pitch, thin and brittle with barely contained hysteria. "This is not a joke. The gala is in 2 days. We can't even pay for the caterers. The VIP entertainment has cancelled. Do you know the humiliation this will cause? My reputation. Our reputation. It will be utterly ruined. She wrung her hands, her carefully manicured nails digging into her palms. Isolde walked past them, her movements unhurried, making her way to the living room, a silent invitation for them to follow. They did, their footsteps heavy with indignation, their minds reeling. She sat down in her favorite armchair, its plush velvet a comfort against her back, her posture regal, her gaze steady, unwavering as she regarded them. Your reputation, Serafina? Isolde mused, a faint, sardonic smile touching her lips, a hint of steel in her usually gentle eyes. Tell me, what reputation would that be? The one built on my money? The one where you take credit for charity events I underwrite, while I'm relegated to the back, or worse, told to stay home because I don't fit the aesthetic. Her voice was quiet, but it resonated with the weight of years of silent suffering. Sterling blanched, his face paling even further. Mother, that's not fair. We were just trying to manage expectations. It was a delicate situation. He wrung his hands, a desperate attempt to regain control. Manage expectations? Isolde scoffed, a dry, humorless sound, devoid of warmth. You managed to exclude me. You managed to diminish me. You managed to make me feel like a burden, an inconvenience, a source of endless funds, but never a mother, never a grandmother, never a respected member of the family. You treated me as an accessory, a tool, never a person. Her voice, though still soft, had gained an undeniable edge of steel, a sharp clarity that cut through their flimsy excuses. This is absurd. Sterling cried, pacing furiously, his agitation palpable. You can't just cut us off. We rely on you. The mortgage, the cars, the children's school, you've always paid for it. It's your responsibility. Your duty. His voice rose to a desperate whine. Isolde's eyes narrowed, a cold fire flickering within their depths. My responsibility? My responsibility was to raise a son who understood the value of hard work, who respected those who loved him, who wasn't entitled to a life he hadn't earned. My responsibility was to show you unconditional love, hoping it would foster gratitude and reciprocal affection. And what did I get in return, Sterling? Decades of being treated like a live-in ATM. A silent partner, a forgotten relative, a wallet on legs. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing, holding them both captive with its intensity. Do you remember the down payment for this house, Sterling? Over $1 million, provided by me. The $15,000 a month for your mortgage, for 20 years? That's $3.6 million, Sterling. From my pocket. Your luxury cars? All bought by me, not leased, but outright purchased, so you wouldn't have the burden of payments. Your failed ventures, Sterling? All bailed out by me, saving you from financial ruin and public embarrassment, time and time again. Serafina's lavish lifestyle and charity events? Every last cent came from me, funding her social climbing and your supposed philanthropy. Serafina opened her mouth to interrupt, a fresh wave of indignation rising, but Isolde cut her off with a sharp, imperious glance, a look that silenced her instantly. And you, Serafina. You, who dared to tell me I wouldn't fit the aesthetic of your elite guest list, dismissing me with a casual wave of your hand. You, who constantly made snide remarks about my outdated style, my boring presence, my sensible shoes, as if my comfort was an affront to your carefully curated image. You, who saw me as nothing more than a checkbook to fund your social aspirations, your designer wardrobe, your endless stream of luxuries. Do you remember when I offered to babysit Lily and Jasper so you could have a night out, and you told me they preferred their nannies, that I wouldn't know their routine? Or when I spent days making my famous chestnut stuffing for Thanksgiving, a family tradition, only for you to order catering and leave my dish untouched, like it was garbage, like my efforts meant nothing? Serafina's face flushed, a mottled red spreading across her neck. Those were minor things. We were busy. You're overreacting. You're being melodramatic. Overreacting? Isolde's voice rose, though still controlled, imbued with the raw power of years of suppressed pain, a crescendo of quiet fury. I have paid your mortgage, your car payments, your children's schooling, your lavish vacations, your designer clothes, your charity galas for over 2 decades. I have poured my husband's legacy, the very essence of his life's work, his integrity, into keeping your gilded cage afloat, hoping that one day, you would see me as more than a source of income. Hoping you would offer me a crumb of genuine affection, a sliver of respect, a moment of sincere gratitude. I wanted a family, not a burden. Her voice trembled slightly now, not from weakness, but from the sheer force of her unleashed emotion, the profound sadness beneath the anger. And for what? To be told I don't fit the aesthetic? To be relegated to a back table? To be treated with contempt and dismissiveness? To have you casually demand another 100,000 for a VIP act for an event I'm already bankrolling, an event I'm not even welcome at? You asked for my heart, and when I gave it, you demanded my wallet, then discarded me when I was no longer convenient. This is not overreacting, Sterling. This is finally reacting. Sterling stepped forward, his voice softening, a desperate, transparent attempt at manipulation, a final, futile effort to pull her back into their orbit. Mother, please. Think of the children. They'll be devastated. They'll have to leave Hawthorne Academy. Their lives will be ruined. What about their future? Isolde's gaze hardened, unyielding. The children will learn what it means to live in the real world, Sterling. They will learn that actions have consequences. They will learn that their parents, not their grandmother, are responsible for their well-being. And perhaps, they will learn the value of $1, something you two clearly never did. They will learn resilience, a far more valuable commodity than unearned privilege. Serafina, seeing their tactics fail, tried another approach, desperate and theatrical. She dropped to her knees, clutching Isolde's hand, her perfectly manicured nails digging into Isolde's soft skin. Isolde, please. We're begging you. We made a mistake. We'll do better. We'll change. We'll include you in everything. We'll be the family you always wanted. Just reverse the transfers. Please. We'll lose everything. Our home, our friends, everything. Tears streamed down her face, real or feigned, Isolde could no longer tell. Isolde gently, but firmly, withdrew her hand, her touch cool and resolute. Her eyes, though filled with a deep, sorrowful ache for the lost years, for the wasted love, held no trace of wavering, no hint of regret for her decision. You will lose nothing that you have earned, Serafina. And as for changing, I have waited decades for that. I have given you every opportunity, every chance, every financial and emotional resource I possessed. My patience has run out. My decision is final. The tap is closed. Permanently. The well is dry. The air in the room crackled with the weight of her words, heavy with unspoken truths and shattered illusions. Sterling and Serafina stood, stunned, their faces pale, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. The woman before them was not the quiet, accommodating Isolde they had always known, the easily manipulated matriarch. She was a force of nature, calm yet unyielding, finally reclaiming her power, her dignity, and her peace. They had come seeking to manipulate her back into submission, to restore their comfortable lives, but they left with the devastating realization that they had, truly, lost everything that mattered, everything they had never truly earned. Sterling and Serafina returned to their mansion in a stunned, defeated silence, the opulent rooms now feeling hollow and oppressive. The gilded cage they had so carelessly occupied suddenly felt like a prison, its bars forged from their own colossal entitlement. The gravity of Isolde's words, her unwavering resolve, echoed in the hollow expanse of their suddenly precarious lives, a chilling premonition of their impending downfall. They walked through the familiar halls, but the grandeur seemed to mock them, a stark reminder of the lifeline that had just been severed. The fallout was swift and brutal, a cascade of consequences they were utterly unprepared for. The gala, the centerpiece of Serafina's social calendar, was a humiliating disaster. Unable to secure the remaining funds for the VIP entertainment and the gourmet catering, they were forced to cancel the star act, scale back the food to basic, uninspired fare, and inform many of their high-profile guests that due to unforeseen circumstances, the event would be significantly pared down. The socialite elite, sensing weakness, sensing the scent of financial distress, quickly gossiped. Whispers followed Serafina, her fall from grace swift and merciless. Once the darling of the charity circuit, she became the subject of ridicule and pity, her name synonymous with the ill-fated gala. Her friends evaporated like mist, unwilling to associate with someone who was clearly losing her grip, and more importantly, her fortune. Invitations to exclusive events stopped arriving. The financial dominoes continued to fall with relentless precision. Within weeks, both Sterling's sleek Mercedes and Serafina's pristine Range Rover were repossessed. The luxury car payments, which Isolde had silently covered for years, had ceased, and without that steady stream of funds, they couldn't afford the exorbitant upkeep, let alone the outstanding balances. The sight of the tow trucks hauling away their symbols of status was a crushing blow to their pride. They were forced to buy two modest, second-hand vehicles, a practical necessity that felt like an unbearable humiliation, their once effortless commute now a daily reminder of their reduced circumstances. Notices from Hawthorne Academy grew more insistent, their tone shifting from polite reminders to stern warnings. With Isolde's regular, substantial tuition payments halted, Lily and Jasper's enrollment was terminated. The children, bewildered and upset, suddenly confronted with a reality they had never imagined, were pulled from the elite private school and enrolled in a local public school, a move they considered an unbearable humiliation, a descent into the mundane. Their expensive extracurriculars, the equestrian lessons, the competitive show fees, the private golf coaching, the international tournaments, all ceased. Their social lives, intricately woven into the fabric of the privileged elite, unraveled, leaving them isolated and adrift. Lily's horse was sold, Jasper's golf clubs put away. The mansion itself, once a symbol of their unearned status, became a source of terror, its spacious rooms echoing with their growing despair. Without Isolde's consistent mortgage payments, default notices piled up, official and unyielding. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings, a cold, legal process that stripped them of their last vestiges of former glory. Sterling, utterly devoid of any real-world skills or ambition, his resume a collection of failed ventures, found himself incapable of securing a job that could even begin to cover their astronomical expenses. Serafina, whose only job had been managing her social calendar and spending Isolde's money, was equally helpless, her social skills proving useless in the face of genuine need. Arguments erupted frequently, loud and vicious, fueled by fear, resentment, and the bitter taste of their shared downfall. Their marriage, built on a shaky foundation of shared indulgence and financial dependency, began to crack under the relentless strain of genuine adversity, revealing the hollowness beneath. They tried calling Isolde again, a desperate barrage of begging, threatening, pleading, sometimes through tears, sometimes with thinly veiled anger, sometimes with saccharine promises they never intended to keep. Isolde simply had her lawyer send a formal cease and desist letter, instructing them that all future communication must go through Mr. Thorne. She had set her boundaries, clear and unyielding, and she would not allow them to be breached. Her peace was too precious to sacrifice. Meanwhile, Isolde began to live. The quiet relief she had felt after her decisive action blossomed into a profound sense of liberation, a joyous lightness of being she hadn't experienced in decades. For the first time in what felt like forever, her money was truly her own, to use as she pleased, without the silent burden of expectation or the sting of ingratitude. She began by calling a dear friend from her youth, Eleanor, a spirited woman with a mischievous twinkle in her eye, whom she had lost touch with due to her family's incessant demands on her time and energy. They met for tea, then for lunch, and then for dinner, their conversations light, genuine, filled with laughter and shared memories, a rediscovery of a cherished bond. Isolde booked a long-desired trip to Italy, a country she and Charles had always planned to visit but never did, his busy schedule and later, her family's demands, always getting in the way. She traveled for a month, indulging in authentic pasta in sun-drenched piazzas, admiring ancient architecture in crumbling Roman ruins, and soaking in the vibrant culture of Tuscan villages. She learned a few phrases of Italian, chatted with locals, and found an unexpected joy in anonymity. She joined a local book club upon her return, debating literature with intelligent, passionate women, and then a painting class, two hobbies she had always yearned to pursue but had never had the time or permission for, constantly afraid of being seen as boring or outdated. That fear had vanished entirely. She was simply Isolde, living for herself, nurturing her own spirit, discovering new facets of her personality. She began volunteering at a local animal shelter, pouring her boundless compassion into beings who offered unconditional love in return, finding a profound satisfaction in their simple, honest affection. She spent her money on experiences, on learning, on genuine connections, and on quiet, well-deserved luxuries for herself, no longer feeling the need to hoard it for others who didn't appreciate it. Months turned into a year, and Isolde Dubois had transformed. Her silver hair, once meticulously pinned, now flowed freely, often adorned with a colorful scarf she had bought on her travels, adding a touch of vibrant charm. Her eyes, once clouded with a quiet sadness, now sparkled with an inner light, reflecting a profound contentment. She had discovered a vibrant new circle of friends, individuals who valued her wisdom, her kindness, and her genuine interest in the world, not her bank account or her social connections. She frequented art galleries, attended classical concerts, and volunteered at a local animal shelter, pouring her boundless compassion into beings who offered unconditional love in return. She spent her money on experiences, on learning, on genuine connections, and on quiet luxuries for herself, no longer feeling the need to hoard it for others. She received occasional updates from Mr. Thorne about Sterling and Serafina. They had indeed lost the mansion. It had been foreclosed upon, and they had been forced to downsize dramatically, moving into a modest apartment in a less affluent part of town, a stark contrast to their former opulence. Sterling, after several failed attempts to find an easy, high-paying job in his accustomed world, had finally taken a position in a retail store, something he once would have considered beneath him, a humiliating descent into the mundane. Serafina, her social empire in ruins, was working as an assistant in a real estate office, a bitter pill for a woman who once hosted galas. Lily and Jasper were adapting, albeit slowly, to their new realities. They were learning to take the bus, to do chores, to appreciate simple things, and for the first time, to understand the concept of earning their way. They had even started visiting Isolde occasionally, tentatively at first, but with growing frequency. Without their parents' subtle manipulation and constant distraction, they were beginning to see their grandmother not as a means to an end, but as a warm, loving presence, a source of comfort and genuine connection. Isolde felt no malice, only a quiet acceptance of the new equilibrium. She knew they were struggling, but she also knew it was a struggle they needed to endure. It was the only way they would ever truly learn, the only path to genuine growth and self-reliance. Her own peace was paramount, a hard-won victory. The story of Isolde Dubois serves as a potent reminder that love and respect cannot be bought with money. For decades, Isolde had poured her vast fortune, her boundless affection, and her very essence into her son's family, hoping to purchase their affection and secure her place in their lives. Instead, she was met with ingratitude, disrespect, and emotional neglect, reduced to little more than a financial resource. It was only when she chose herself, when she finally drew a firm boundary and cut off the flow of her generosity, that she truly found liberation. True wealth is not measured in possessions or the ability to provide for others, but in self-worth, dignity, and genuine, reciprocal connections. Sometimes, the greatest act of love, both for oneself and for others, is to set boundaries and allow consequences to teach lessons that words never could. Isolde learned that the deepest loyalty one owes is to oneself, and in honoring her own value, she reclaimed her life, finding happiness and freedom far richer than any material comfort could provide. Her family, stripped of their unearned privileges, was finally forced to confront their own capabilities, or lack thereof, and begin the arduous journey of standing on their own 2 feet, perhaps for the very first time. This channel features many stories of justice and life lessons, where ordinary people find extraordinary strength to reclaim their lives. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next compelling narrative. Now, we turn to you, our wonderful audience. Have you ever encountered such profound ingratitude in your own life? Or perhaps, have you witnessed someone else being taken advantage of in a similar way, where their generosity was met with disdain? What would you have done if you were in Isolde's shoes? Did her actions resonate with you? Share your thoughts, experiences, and advice in the comments below. We read every single one, and your insights truly enrich our community.